Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Ruach Kodesh. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Romans, the 7th chapter. Know ye not, brethren, for I speak to them that know the law, how that the law hath dominion over a man as long as he liveth? Right, because for you that are under the law, as long as you live, that law has dominion over you. You are subject, you have to obey it. For the woman which hath an husband is bound by the law to her husband as long as he liveth. Right. A woman that is married has to stay with her man as long as he's alive, because he's still technically her husband, right? But if the husband be dead, she is loose from the law of her husband. She is free to remarry, right? So then, if while her husband liveth, she be married to another man, she shall be called an adulteress. But if her husband be dead, she is free from that law. So it's the same action, but different circumstances. Marrying another man while your husband is alive is adultery. Marrying another man, same action, while your husband is dead, is not adultery. You're free to do that. And Paul is using this here to make a point. It says here, so she is free from the law so that she is no adulteress. There's the same action, but now there's no consequence for it. Though she be married to another man. Something that she would have been considered wicked or an adulteress for doing under different circumstances. Wherefore, my brethren, ye also are become dead to the law by the body of Hamashiach, that ye should be married to another, even to him who is raised from the dead, that we should bring forth fruit unto God. So, if Israel is likened, or the believers are likened unto a woman who was previously married to the law, here Paul flips it a bit, right? And rather than the husband or the law being dead, you became dead to the law. So imagine if you I'm gonna use another slight example, like similar to this, right? If you had memory, right, you died, you got reincarnated, but you remembered your past life. What would happen is, and let's say you just ignore the from a baby all the way to a mature age. Let's just say you get reincarnated and you're a mature age, right? What happens then is, while in your previous life, if you were married, let's say you were a woman and you were married, you were bound to that marriage. But maybe it wasn't the best marriage for you, right? You ended up dying. And then you got reincarnated and you kept the same memories. In your reincarnation, right? Let's say you're now of age, you're free from that previous marriage you were part of because you died and you were loose from that. So now you will still remember that you were in a situation like that, but you're no longer tied to that situation. You're free now. So here Paul is saying, we being dead to the law are loosed from that being bound onto it, that relationship to it. So now we're free to remarry another, which is Yahushai, the new husband, spiritually, that is. Okay, so spiritually being married to the Lord is basically like being joined to the Lord and doing the things that he requires of you. So as he says here, even to him who was raised from the dead, that we should bring forth fruit unto God. That is, through our labor, right, we would bring forth righteous things, right? Believers, and just righteous deeds in general. These are all likened unto fruit. For when we were in the flesh, the motions or the workings of sin, which were by the law, because sin comes by way of the law. If there is no law, there is no sin, did work in our members to bring forth fruit unto death. So while we were in the flesh, right, we were subject to sin and we would break the law, and that would bring forth the result of death. But now we are delivered from the law, that being dead wherein we were held, that we should serve in newness of spirit. So we died after being baptized in Yahushua and were loosed from that bound of the law. Therefore, we can serve in newness of life or in newness of spirit and not in the oldness of the letter. We're no longer bound to having to keep all the laws to survive. right? Like we were when we were held or previously married to it. Now through Yahweh Shai, there is a new way. We don't have to lose our minds because you're not circumcised, or you're not doing this or you're not doing that. Guess what? It doesn't work that way now. Now we have a new husband. Now we got Yahweh Shai, and he says what we got to do is this. We got to have faith in him. We got to do the things he's instructed us to do. What shall we say then? Is the law sin? God forbid. Nay, I had not known sin. So, well, we keep saying here that sin is tied to the law, but so is the law sin then? Is it the law that makes us sin? No. Paul is saying that's not what I'm saying. God forbid. Because shit, if it wasn't for the law, I wouldn't have even known what sin was. Right? So I had not known sin but by the law, for I had not known lust, except the law said, thou shalt not covet. Once again, if there's no how you know you're speeding if there's no speed limit? Yeah, you know that you're going a certain mile per hour, right? But is that considered speeding? Is it not? So when there is something that explicitly says don't do this, and you do it, or you've been doing it, then okay, now I know that now I know that thing is wrong, or it's imagine having a habit. I always used to do this thing this way, and then somebody catches you one day and says, hey, you're not supposed to be doing that. Now you're like, oh, shoot, now your mind is aware. Oh, my gosh, this whole time I've been doing this. I've been going off. All right. But if you were never told that is going off, you would have been doing it like everything is all fine. But sin, taking occasion by the commandment, wrought in me all manner of concupiscence. For without the law, sin was dead. And what Paul means by taking occasion is we being subject to vanity, right? Being imperfect. What ends up happening is you may be fine until you're told, don't do that. The law is introduced. Then sin says, oh, yeah? Well, now that you told me not to do it, now that's exactly what I want to do. Now I'm tempted to do it. If there's, let's say, cookies, right? You go out, you go home, there's cookies in the cookie jar on top of the fridge. Nobody says anything to you. It's just there. Nobody prohibits you, and everything is just there. You might take some. These are pretty good. Okay, that's fine. You're not really pressed for it because you know that whenever you want it, it's there. You can go and do it. Go have some. But the second you're told, do not touch the cookies in the cookie jar, for some reason, that's all you can think about. And even if you do right or you do wrong, it's all you can think about. Why shouldn't I touch the cookies over there? Is there something wrong? Is there something in there? If you're weak, your curiosity will force you to touch. Well, every time you walk past it, you look at it. Hey, it looks good though. And because you keep thinking about it more and more, you're more inclined to want to do it. Because you were told not to do it. If you weren't told anything about it, it would have been normal. But now every time you go into the kitchen, you're going to think about those cookies. And you're either going to need to resist the temptation to touch it, or you're going to be giving in, and maybe you're going to take one out the jar and just, what's so good about this? Why did they tell me not to touch it? So sin takes occasion by the commandment. Because there is now a law, sin says, okay, now I want to go and break it. It says here, wrought in me all manner of concupiscence, for without the law, sin was dead. And it's a bit similar to the concept of you have something, you have something, right? But it's always there, it's laying there. But the second somebody else wants it, now you want it. That, like they say, you take things for granted. But the second you see that somebody else wants it, oh, no, I don't want to throw it away. No, it's mine. Now it becomes so valuable. So it says here, all manner of concupiscence, right? All manner of wicked things that shouldn't be done. For without the law, sin was dead. When there wasn't any law, what are you breaking? And the act of breaking is sin. For I was alive without the law once, but when the commandment came, sin revived and I died. So at one point, right, not having knowledge of the laws, you were living in ignorance, right? But when you were made privy to it, when the commandment came, sin revived. Oh, now that I know that I shouldn't do this, I want to do it. That's how sin works in the flesh. And I died. You became subject now because you're not perfect. So you're going to go off at some point. Right? If you're not told that you're not, look, when back when we were in the world, you would if you cooked, you'd cook whatever time you want. You didn't know that there was a Sabbath and that means you shouldn't light a fire and so on. Guess what? Now that you realize that that was the case, how many times have you lit a fire on the Sabbath and damn, oh man, Salaki, I forgot that. Now all of a sudden, boom, you're dead, right? Because now sin has revived because you know that there is a law. And the commandment which was ordained to life, I found to be unto death. For sin, taking occasion by the commandment, deceived me, and by it slew me. Okay, and basically the concept here of verses 10 and 11 that Paul is saying is that, you know, sin hijacks the law by turning the good commandment of the Lord into a trigger for rebellion. Right, that's what it does. The Lord says, don't do this or do that, which is for your good. Sin it brings that temptation to trigger rebellion. Okay, it's like a spotlight on guilt. The law spotlights that highlights that guilt. Okay, so not the law itself. Okay, the law itself is not evil, but it's the things that it triggers. Verse 12, it says here, so anyway, in verse 10, when he says, and the commandment which was ordained to life, because the laws were given so that you could live a righteous life, and if you were to keep it the right way, you would attain life, right? But he says, I found to be unto death, because I myself was not perfect. So rather than reaping the benefits of it, I was getting the consequences of breaking it because I couldn't keep it. For sin, taking occasion by the commandment. So sin saw that as an opportunity and deceived me, and by it slew me. That deception is more so through the lust of the flesh, causing you to do things that you know you shouldn't, leading to the consequence of sin, which is death. So Paul's not saying he actually died, but now he was, you know, guilty of transgression. Wherefore the law is holy, and the commandment holy and just and good. So he's saying, I'm not saying the law is evil. Was then that which is good made death unto me? So he's saying, was then the law which was good made death unto me? God forbid. I'm not saying that the law is what's you know, bringing death per se, but rather sin, that it might appear sin working death in me by that which is good. That is the law. That sin by the commandment might become exceeding sinful. So in the NLT it says here, but how can that be? Did the law, which is good, cause my death? Of course not. Sin used what was good to bring about my condemnation to death. So we can see how terrible sin really is. It uses God's good commandments for its own evil purposes. For we know that the law is spiritual, but I am carnal, sold under sin. See the two conflicting natures, right? The conflict of two natures. There's the law of the spirit, and which is righteous, and then there's the law of the flesh. So Paul is saying here, we know the law is spiritual, but I am carnal, sold under sin. So the trouble is not with the law, for it is spiritual and good. The trouble is with me, for I am all too human, a slave to sin. See, that's why the Lord said the fault wasn't with the covenant or the law, but finding fault with us, because we are yet in the flesh. We're the creature, we're made subject to vanity. We're not perfect. For that which I do, I allow not. For what I would, that do I not. But what I hate, that do I. See? So it's going to right. So he says here, that which I do, I allow not, meaning like as it says in the NIV, I don't understand what I do. For what I would, that I do not. The things that I want to do, which are righteousness, that's what I don't end up doing. But what I hate, which is sinning, that's what I do inherently, because that's the programming of this flesh. If then I do that which I would not, so if I end up doing the deeds I don't want to do, I consent unto the law that it is good. NLT, but if I know that what I'm doing is wrong, this shows that I agree that the law is good. Now then, it is no more I that do it, but sin that dwelleth in me, because I know that the law is good and I'm trying to do good. So that's why he's saying it's not I that I'm doing it, but it's sin that dwells in me. It's my flesh, these chains of darkness that has sin embedded in it. That's what's causing me to go off. But my actual intentions and desire is to do righteousness. For I know that in me, that is in my flesh, dwelleth no good thing. For to will is present with me, but how to perform that which is good I find not. See, so I want the desire for righteousness is within me, but how to actually perform and do those things I'm not able to do because of the flesh. Paul is not saying that 24/7 he's committing sins or he can't do any righteous acts at all. No, no, no. But he's speaking holistically here. I find myself doing certain things that are going off because I'm not perfect. I don't want to do that, but it's just a part of the inherent nature of the flesh, of the human body. For the good that I would, I do not, but the evil which I would not, that I do. The perfect righteous life I try to live, I'm not able to. But the evil life that I try to avoid, I end up slipping up and doing every so often. Not with intent. Now, if I do that I would not, it is no more I that do it, but sin that dwelleth in me. If somebody forced you to rob a bank, you're not you're not a criminal in the sense that you didn't decide, you didn't wake up one day and say this is what I want to do. You had no other option. So Paul is saying here, if I'm doing something, the fact that I don't want to do it shows that it's no more I that I'm doing it. It's not my will to do it, but it's because sin dwells in me. That is the reason why I do it. I find then a law that when I would do good, evil is present within me. So he's like, I've noticed this sort of yin and yang kind of principle within the spirit and the body, right? That when I would do good, evil is present with me. And that is the war between the spirit and the flesh. For I delight in the law of God after the inward man, that is the spirit. That's what I take joy in. That's what I desire to do. But I see another law in my members. There's another principle. There's another power. There's another law in which my body, my flesh wants to follow, which is warring against the law of my mind. My mind wants to do what's right. It wants to follow the laws of righteousness. But my flesh, my body doesn't want to do that. And bringing me into captivity to the law of sin, which is in my members. See, so he's saying here, the law of my members is trying to bring me under the law of sin. It's trying to cause me to sin, which is in my members. What's an example? Going back to that, the example of a bacon, egg, and cheese sandwich made with pork in it, right? The members. The law of the members trying to bring you under the law of sin will use hunger to get you to try and eat that sandwich because it is a sin to do it. And your mind knows that. Your mind, the law of your mind says, don't do it. How then does the law of your members try to bring you captive under sin? It starts to release those chemicals. It starts to make you feel very, very hungry. It starts to make you feel weak. It enhances the smell of what you're sniffing, and you start salivating, and your brain is now. These are all things the flesh will try to do because it's trying to give in to its desires. And the second you give in and you take a bite out of that, you have become subject to sin because you knew you shouldn't have done it, but it's like a servant being told by his master to do something and you do it anyway. Oh, wretched man that I am, who shall deliver me from this body of death? See, so Paul is saying, I'm a wretched man because if you look at me based on just the actions alone, you'd see that, yeah, the actions are not matching the things that I want to do in my mind. In the spirit, my spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. That's why he said, who will deliver me from this body of death? I thank God through Yahushua HaMashiach our Lord. So then, with the mind, I serve the law of God, but with the flesh, the law of sin. So you may go off, you may, slip up here and there, but that is the flesh. That's the inherent nature of the flesh. But mentally, you serve the Lord. your desire and your drive is to do the things that are pleasing to the Lord. And you may fall short here and there, but that's because it's like you have two roommates in one body, right? In one house, but you do the best that you can. And that's why the scriptures say the Lord looks at the inward. What is the inner man trying to do? Okay. Why wasn't the spirit at this meeting yesterday? Let me go and look within his mind. Oh, okay. It seems the spirit was actually tied up that day. The flesh was able to tie him up, throw him in a basement somewhere. So the spirit was really kicking and screaming, trying to make it, but because he was tied up and thrown in the basement, he wasn't able to make it. Okay. So you know what? It happens, right? Maybe he looked at his left. He didn't see the sin coming. He didn't see the flesh coming. The flesh hit him in the head with a baseball bat and got the best of him. Sometimes it happens. This is just me personifying the spirit and the flesh to try and make a point here. Now, what that looks like is maybe, for example, you might forget and you might light a fire, right? That's your flesh getting the better of you because your instant reaction of like, oh shit, you light a fire on the Sabbath is your true desire, right? I didn't want to do it. But memory, which is a part of the flesh, got the better of you. You forgot. Okay? So that brings us to the end of the book of Romans, the 7th chapter. Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Bracha Kodash. And until next time, Shalom.